Okay, we'll call the Town Plan and Zoning Commission public hearing and regular meeting on Wednesday, August 9th, 2017 to order. First order of business is pledge allegiance.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
I'll have the secretary read the roll.
Chairman Anita.
Here.
Commissioner Camillo.
Here.
Commissioner Claffey. Commissioner Minor. Commissioner Kane.
Here.
Commissioner Sierra. Commissioner Sobieski.
Here.
Commissioner Battalica. Commissioner Jangrave. Commissioner Fox.
Yeah.
We'll have Commissioner Fox sit in for, you've been sitting for who? Minor?
Yes.
For Commissioner Minor. Mr. Planner, is there any changes to the agenda?
Right. The only change is the June 28 minutes were not distributed, so although they're done, they're not available for you, so I recommend deleting that from the agenda.
Okay. Any questions on the agenda from the commissioners? We're all set. Next item is public participation. Items not listed on the agenda. Speakers limited to 2 minutes per person. Anyone from the public wishing to speak at this time? Please come forward, state your name and address for the record. Seeing none, the next item on the agenda is zoning enforcement officer's report. I'll turn it over to Mike for his report.
Okay, I know you guys are just getting the report now that wasn't in the packet. If anybody has any questions, we do have something else that I'd like to go over with you once we get the laptop up and running. You take a look at something.
Yeah, don't wait. It's acting weird.
Could you give us an update on these unlicensed auto repair businesses?
Which one? That's the one on Holmes Road.
Yeah, Robbins and Holmes.
So the property on Holmes, we sent an update letter out based on the fact that there was a significant amount of progress as far as the vehicles. The number of vehicles has been drastically reduced. There's only a couple left. Nothing new has showed up. So we're looking at that, just giving them a little bit more time, but it looks like those cars have started to leave the property. And then as far as the other one was on Robbins, that one just came in. That was a complaint
No,
from
Holmes Road,
Yeah, the Holmes Road one is the one that with the vehicles.
Are
Most
they
of,
operating? You're saying they're operating as an automotive license or auto dealership down there?
yeah, we got information that there was a tenant who was repairing cars. I don't have any indication that they're selling cars. So
We can't repair cars either.
right. So we sent them a notice for that and told me he had to get all the cars and everything out of there. So there were probably 30 cars back there when we originally found out. There are only a couple left. So the vehicles have started to leave the site, and he's cleaned it up. So that's what we're.
Are you putting a cease and desist on any repairs?
We haven't issued a cease and desist because, like I said, we've seen progress towards getting all the vehicles out of there. So we're not at that point.
Yeah, but he still can't repair vehicles there. Even if he doesn't leave any vehicles overnight, he can't operate an automotive repair
Yeah,
shop.
the vehicles weren't there overnight. The vehicles were acquired. He had a number of vehicles which he was storing on site, and those vehicles have either been sold or they're not there. So I haven't seen any vehicles physically being repaired myself, but if there's no vehicles on site, then I think it's fair to assume the activity has stopped because there isn't anything left to be repaired.
Did you go in the building?
I've not gone in the building.
Well, you listed it as an unlicensed auto repair facility. If he doesn't have a license, he can't do repairs. So
Correct.
I suggest we get a little stronger and find out whether he's doing repairs or not. If he is doing repairs, then we have to cease and desist because he's never come to this commission to acquire permission to have an auto license, and he's probably not registered with the state of Connecticut either.
Correct.
Okay.
And as far as the one on East Robbins, we literally just came across my desk. I got a bunch of information from a resident, so I'm still kind of looking into the depth of that and whether it's someone who's just repairing a car on the side or if it's more of a business operation. So we don't have a lot of information on that yet.
Mr. Chairman, one other question. Do you have anything else that has come in lately that isn't on here, that you're working with? If you could give us a report on some of the things.
Stuff that's just come in. I mean, frankly, this is a really busy time for us, so we have a lot of stuff that's just come in. We've got some stuff a couple of things on the Berlin Turnpike, something at Stu Leonard's. Actually, I think that made it on here.
It did.
Which isn't shown as updated on this point, but that's been, 3475, that's been taken care of. That's been removed. The Rizzo Pool sign has been taken care of. We talked about at the last meeting, 64 Long Street.
Yeah.
That property is basically at this point, we filed the initial lien on the land records, and they're basically accruing a daily fine. Because we've done everything that we can do as far as trying to contact them and figure out, the different avenues that we have. So that process has kind of run its course, and the lien has been filed, and until the property is cleaned up, fines will accrue.
So the hearing officer affirmed the fines.
Correct. The statute requires that the hearing officer affirm fines that are going to be imposed if there's no hearing requested by the property owner. So once that appeal period had expired, the hearing officer came in and basically reviewed to make sure that it was prudent to do so, and looked at everything that had been sent and the dates to make sure that everything was basically done legitimately. And then at that point in time, the property owner was notified that as of that date, the fines would begin to accrue on a daily basis. So that's what's happening with that one. 337 Willard Avenue it came in from one of the commissioners. That sign has been removed. It was in the right of way. We took that out.
Dog daycare center or something, a doggy care? What's
Yeah,
going
I
on
had a
there?
meeting with the animal control officer, and there's actually some stuff that, some state level stuff that they have to be involved with, and licensing and inspections and different things. So she was going to touch base with the contact person that she has for Newington for that part of the permitting, and then let me know how that meeting went. We're going to take it from there.
You have it in a residential zone, which is not allowed and not
Correct.
by our regulations, so why bother going to the state? Shouldn't she come to us first?
Well, I reached out to the animal control officer to see if there was any history and what was going on there to get a better idea, and she said that she wanted to talk to the state first. So it's not a matter of if there's going to be a problem. We just want to gather all the information first.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, she's running a home occupation. She has to come under that portion of the regulation if she wants to run it out of her house.
She, based on my review of the regs, that's not one that we would allow. So
Yeah.
she's, that option probably won't be provided to her, because I don't think she meets the regs for that.
Right.
That's-
Okay,
I
so
would say
how does she does not fit the current zoning regulations for the town of Newington
Correct.
for a resident zone?
Yeah, the allowable home occupations don't allow for something with that much activity and people coming and going, and it's really not the type of business that we permit.
Okay, so how are we going to handle it as far as her going to the state? What's the next procedure? Where do we go with it from here?
Once I just get the information back based on, what the history is, then she'll be sent a letter, and her option really is to find a bricks and mortar location in a business zone or close. I mean, she can't keep doing it there. There's no option.
Maybe you should encourage her to, if it's a business that's a profitable business for her, that she move into a commercial area.
Yeah.
Okay. So we want to keep up on that because we don't want to let it keep going
Yeah.
on. Because we've gotten complaints from neighbors. Anything else from the commissioners on this report? Commissioner Sobieski.
Mike, just a real quick question. I'm curious about this Stu's here with the salt pile.
Yeah.
Do a lot of businesses have salt piles that are stored? Or is this the only one that you heard of?
This is the only one that I'm aware of. I mean, I don't know if there are landscaper, anybody who has material as part of their business that they've got stockpiled somewhere, but
Well, no, excuse me, no, I'm just kind of concerned with the shopping centers.
yeah, I'm not aware of any other buildings or plazas in town that do this.
Okay.
But I made a phone call and they took care of it like in 24 hours, so.
Yeah, because that's considered contaminant material if it gets in water streams.
The problem with this one, Commissioner Sobieski, is that the pile was leaked, when it was raining, it was
leaching into the water.
into the water stream that's behind there. There's a wetlands area right behind Stu Leonard's.
I'm just wondering if there's any other shopping centers that might fall into the same area with the same question. That's all.
Doing anything either. This isn't working
Okay.
either.
Can we get that up or no?
No. And there's usually a whole pile of them inside, but they're all being worked on for some reason.
The only thing, what I can do is I can send it out and you guys can discuss it at the next meeting based on what you're feeling and if you're willing to do that. I can just kind of let you know.
When are they starting their renovation?
They're planning to start, I think, probably in the next couple of weeks. They want to get things rolling by September. So basically,
It looks like we're going to have to make it, we're talking about the McDonald's has requested, their menu boards, they want to do a digital menu board. Well, this doesn't fit the regulations because we don't allow digital signs. But the zoning enforcement officer feels that this is a different case because it's the menu sign that's not on the street. It's static, it only changes 3 times a day with breakfast, lunch, and dinner. It's actually like a TV screen, so when you drive up, you look at a TV screen and you see basically what they're offering for food for that day or whatever. But the problem is that it doesn't fit the regulation as we have it written today. So we'd have to make a change to our regulation if you decided that you wanted to add menu boards to the regulation where we have it only for gas station prices on the Berlin Turnpike. I wanted you to see what it looked like. He had sent me a picture on my email, so, but that don't help. I thought we were going to be able to get it tonight, so we'll have them send it out, email to all of us, and we'll discuss it at the next meeting. But if they want to get going in September, we're going to have to make a change to a regulation if you want to allow it. Okay, Mike?
yeah, so I'll send it out to everybody and,
Have the planner put it on the agenda.
yeah, we can even do that for next.
I don't know where as an item of discussion. He'll decide.
Yeah, I mean, if the feeling is that it's not something that the direction the commission wants to go, then, maybe you can just bring it up under a report, or I'll talk to him based on what information we have, and I'll see if I can get anything else. We have a photo, I'll see if I can get something more from them, just rather than just one photo, so that you guys get a better idea.
Yeah, if we're going to allow it, we want it consistent with the regulations, so the regulations would have to be changed. Anything else for the zoning enforcement officer? Okay, so anything you have, anything else, Mike?
No, not at this point. I think that's about it.
Okay. Next item on the agenda is the remarks by commissioners. Any remarks at this time?
Do you want me to try to do that?
Seeing none, we'll go into the public portion of the agenda. We're going into public hearing, and we'll have the vice chairman read the procedures of the public hearing that we're following.
Procedures for the public hearing. The order of the proceedings at the public hearing shall be the following. A, convening by the chairman. B, reading of the notice of the commission secretary or commissioner designated by the chairman to act in his stead. C, identification and location of the property involved by the town planner. D, a statement of the issue to be considered by the chairman or the town planner. E, presentation by the applicant limited to 20 minutes unless specific extension is granted by the chair. F, persons wishing to speak in favor of the application limited to 2 minutes per person. G, persons wishing to speak in opposition to the application limited to 3 minutes per person. H, rebuttal by the applicant limited to 5 minutes total. I, rebuttal by the opposition limited to 5 minutes total. During a public hearing, it shall be within the discretion of the chairman whether the time limitation should be varied slightly, provided the commission consents to any such variance. In no case shall an extension be for more than 20% of the allotment indicated above or 1 minute, whichever is greater.
Would you please read petition 2417?
Petition 24-17, text amendment, section 6.2, temporary sign regulations, Town Planning and Zoning Commission applicant.
Because this is a petition that the zoning board is initiating ourselves, we'll have the town planner make the presentation for the town.
Okay, I apologize for our high-tech not working. Normally, we would have a copy of the agenda on the monitor there for the public to look at, but there are copies on the table out in the hall if anybody wants to grab a copy. The purpose of this amendment is to, well, the commission has been working for a number of years to come up with an amendment to the sign regulations that addresses the needs of the business community, but still protects the brand, as we call it, of Newington, and is enforceable in a way that's reasonable for everybody concerned. And so the draft that we're going to be discussing tonight was to a large extent informed by a letter that was submitted to TPZ by the Newington Chamber of Commerce. So a lot of the concepts in this amendment came from consultation with the Chamber and other comments that have been received over the years. The regulation... Well, Mr. Chairman, I don't know. I wish I could display it, and I know the public has a copy if they want one. Do you want me to summarize it, or we go through it? It's like about 6 or 7 paragraphs, maybe just touch on each paragraph?
Why don't you just
Mr. Chairman,
go through it so the public has, because we don't have the, up on the
Right.
monitors, why don't you just go through the whole thing?
Okay. Well, okay, so what we've done, or what we've proposed to do is delete the entire temporary sign regulation and start from scratch. And what we're proposing to end up with is, looks like 12 paragraphs, and I'll start with paragraph A. Permits for temporary ground signs in any commercial zone, except as prohibited in section 6.22B, may be approved by the Town Planning and Zoning Commission for a 4-month period and may be renewed for 1 or more additional 4-month periods. Permits for other temporary signage in any commercial zone may be approved by the Town Planning and Zoning Commission in accordance with section 6.22I. B, temporary ground signs are not permitted in the front yard setback of any parcel with frontage on the Berlin Turnpike. That's our IT guy. Scott, we may have it fixed, but I'll call you back in a minute if we don't. Okay, thanks.
Just need you to log on, I think we'll be okay.
Oh, okay. Excuse me, folks, but I really think it'd be helpful to have it displayed.
Guess I'm going over the counter. You want to get this?
All right, well, that's looking a lot better than what I was getting before. Okay, I think this will work. Yeah. Just have to plug the cable in.
I don't know if it'll reach.
All right, well, let me continue. Paragraph B, temporary ground signs are not permitted in the front yard setback area of any parcel with frontage on the Berlin Turnpike. C, in the BTZ, the Business Town Center Zone, and the B Business Zones, temporary ground signs may be permitted on the sidewalk not less than 25 feet apart, where the Town Planning and Zoning Commission finds that such signs will not create excessive clutter nor impede pedestrians. Paragraph D, temporary ground signs shall be A-frame or tent style only. H or I frame signs and, quote, wind waiver signs are prohibited. Temporary ground sign material may be wood, metal, or plastic. E, temporary ground signs shall have no more than 12 square feet of message area, e.g. 2 feet by 3 feet times 2 sides, and be no more than 5 feet in total height. F, Temporary ground signs shall be placed not more than 5 feet from the main entrance to the business and shall not impede pedestrian traffic. G, temporary ground signs shall be displayed during normal business hours only and shall not be placed in any street right-of-way except as provided in section 6.22C. Temporary ground signs displayed outside of normal business hours or in the street right-of-way, except as provided in section 6.2.2C, are subject to immediate confiscation by the town. H, temporary ground signs shall not be lighted, flashing, digital, or rotating, and may be denied if determined by the Town Planning and Zoning Commission to be a hazard to the public. And then finally, I, other temporary signage includes cold air inflatables and banners attached to the building, not to exceed 2 in number. Banners shall be no larger than 1 square foot for each linear foot of building frontage and may be displayed for not more than 50 days per year in increments of not more than 25 days. Not more than 1 ground-mounted cold air inflatable sign, not to exceed 18 feet in height, is permitted. No roof-mounted sign or cold air inflatable sign tethered to the roof is permitted. So that was the amendment. Oh, thank you very much. That was the amendment that was filed with the town clerk and submitted to the regional planning agency. But after it was filed, the commission discussed it more and felt that there should be some way to allow what I'll call the plazas on the Berlin Turnpike to have signage without it conflicting with the commission's desire not to have signage directly on the Berlin Turnpike. So what I'm suggesting is that the paragraph that says that there will be no signage on the Berlin Turnpike be modified to, and I'll get into it in a minute, to allow merchants in plazas to have a temporary sign on the walkway in front of their store. Not on the sidewalk per se, but on the walkway in front of their plaza. And in the town center zone, same thing. Merchants would be allowed to have a sign in front of their store on the sidewalk, but only with the town manager's permission, because that is town property, so that would have to be approved by the town manager. So with that, Mr. Chairman, I'll turn it over to the commission if they have any questions, or then go to public comments.
Okay, are there any commission comments about the regulation as it's proposed? It's our regulation. We've been working on this for quite some time. Commissioner Sobieski.
Yeah, just, Mr. Minor, can you just clarify something for me? I see you have a picture of the shopping center up there by Joey.
Right.
Yeah. All right. There's a bunch of other stores here. Are they going to be able to put signs out also on the sidewalk? I just want to make sure that we're not,
Right. That's
the first one to the gate gets a sign, the second one says, see you later. That's what I was concerned with.
Right, exactly. No, it wouldn't work that way. The way it would
Okay.
work is, and let me call up that picture so that the public can see what you're looking at.
The way that the regulations would be written is that they could put a sign 5 feet from the door, and the distance between the two signs would have to be greater than 25 feet.
Well,
That's how the regulations read.
Right.
As he
Right.
just proposed.
Yeah, I chose this image because I think this is kind of typical of the situation that we're talking about. This is the Chuck E. Cheese Plaza, the Joann Fabrics. There are 11 stores along the front of this building here, and they have an average of 65 feet each on average. Some of them are much wider than others. But if the principle is to allow any merchant to have a sign, and the sign has to be no more than 5 feet from his front door, then there'll be no problem with
Okay.
all 6 or 7 of these merchants theoretically having a sign directly in front of their door, because none of them will be any closer than maybe a dozen feet apart at the most. But if it gets to a situation where the commission feels that the 11th guy to come in is going to create clutter, is going to be an impediment to pedestrians, the commission would have the authority to say no to that person. But in theory, any of these tenants would be eligible for a temporary sign. And the same in the town center zone. I don't have a picture of Market Square, but the same concept along Market Square.
Thank you, that's all I was concerned with.
Any other commissioner remarks? Seeing none, we'll go into the public portion. Anyone here wishing to speak in favor of this application, please come forward, state your name and address for the record. Seeing none, anyone wishing to speak in opposition to this regulation, please come forward, state your name and address for the record.
Good evening, Gail Whitney, 31 Old Hatchery Lane. I'm also the Executive Director of the Newington Chamber. First of all, thank you for working with us all these months and taking into consideration everything that we have proposed in our letter. And, we appreciate all the effort that has gone into it. It's not that I'm opposed or in favor. I think everything is great. I just, there's a couple changes that I just, we would like to consider. And instead of the 4-month, make it a 6 months. I think, half a year. Or I was going to say quarterly, because sometimes depending on the business, and I think they either think quarterly or they think half a year. So I just think 4 months is an odd number. It's just a suggestion. The other thing is that the permit fee, I hope you are considering, because Newington is made up of so many small businesses, that the permit fee does not increase, make it affordable, don't make it astronomical, or keep it the same. I believe it's $15. So I would hope that you will consider that. And the 5 feet, which I see, between the picture and everything that you just had, if just suggesting make it up to 10 feet, and not saying 10 feet, but just saying up to 10 feet. But otherwise, I think you have answered you have definitely come back with the letter that we sent to you back in May. You've definitely worked with all we've asked for. The business community, I don't know if they have contacted any of you directly or whatever about this. I do get emails and calls all the time saying what's going on, and I keep saying they're working on it. And so I appreciate what you've done. I appreciate the amendment to all this. Just as I said, just maybe tweaking those couple things, and we would definitely be cool with it. So thank you very much.
Good evening, I'm Deanna Rainey, 110 Grandview Drive, Newington, Connecticut. I as well am more so in favor of. It's been a lot of work, but I think this is definitely something that will help out a lot of businesses here in town, mostly small businesses, which will be great. Under A, I agree. I think just business people in general, we think in quarters or. So I think it would be easier just to keep track for 3 months or 6 months. Section B, I think it's just reiterating what's on the bottom there, which I think you guys had just gone over as well, about specifically zooming into the Berlin Turnpike there. But I don't know, just the way that it's worded in B is just kind of vague to me. The front yard setback, if it's the state right-of-way, then maybe it can just be worded as nothing would be allowed in the state right-of-way on the Berlin Turnpike. I don't know. That would just be my suggestion. And as Gail had touched on the fee for the permit, and I don't expect it to stay the same at all. It's $15 for 25 days right now, but just keeping in mind the rate that it is at is $60 a day, and to keep it affordable for small businesses would be great. So thank you guys.
So you're really not in opposition to this regulation, are you? Because you came up under opposition to our regulation.
Correct. That's why in the beginning I said I'm really more for this, but Gail hesitated, so I hesitated.
Chairman, could I ask you?
So that's what happened.
I'm going to allow my commissioner to ask you a question.
Oh.
The last statement there, you talked about the permit fees. Could you clarify your statements for me?
Sure. So right now the permit for temporary signs, it was for 25 days, it was $15. So if you work that out, I believe it's 60 cents a day if I did my math right. And so for this to increase, I would absolutely expect it to increase, especially because the town's going to be working more on enforcing. Thank you. That was a good word.
Very good. Thank
Cool.
you.
Thank you.
Gail Bedrejko, 21 Isabel Terrace. I was actually waiting for the business community to speak first, and I was a little confused when they didn't get up for the, for being in favor of it. So I'm going to follow up on their comments. And
Are you in favor or against the?
I'm in favor, but with the modifications that the two previous speakers made. And also, I want to, one suggestion I was going to make was about the Berlin Turnpike, and I'm very pleased that that is included now within the plaza framework. But I've been following this for quite a while through the TPZ meetings, the Economic Development Committee meetings, and the chamber meetings. And I've also done research on area towns and, just signage in general, particularly a lot of areas call them movable signs, not temporary signs, because I think it fits more what this sign regulation is. But in any event, does this amendment, given the conversations I know that the business community has had, is it giving it everything the business community wants? No. Is it meeting all their needs? No. But yet, I think this is a good compromise, because after all the discussion and work that the chamber has done, it's meeting their basic needs. And the work that they did on the proposal that they gave you shows an effort to compromise. And I know they were very cognizant of satisfying the business needs, but also satisfying the concerns of the TPZ as well. So as chamber members and small businesses, they've shown an ability or a willingness to compromise. So I believe that failure to adopt this amendment, or something that at least allows some type of temporary signage, would kind of be interpreted as unwillingness to compromise on behalf of the town. And we don't want to project that image, because we are business friendly. We want to continue to be business friendly and, bring businesses into town. So I'm asking that you support this amendment. Thank you.
Just to, I don't want to go in, but I think you missed one of the points, is that the TPZ compromised to the point where we wanted to abolish the temporary signs, and we moved from that position all the way to allowing them in the way that we presented this application. So as far as movement, and as far as working with the community and working with the business community, I think this TPZ made a major effort from abolishing to where we are tonight.
No, my point was that they showed the proposal was a compromise, and by adopting it, you're showing your willingness to compromise too.
May I make one more comment?
They have to come up to the.
You have to come up and present your name and address again.
I do have a question that, right now, the moratorium is still in place, as far as I know. So the adoption of this will take the moratorium away?
We will vote to abolish the moratorium when we make our decision whether we're approving this or not.
Right. And, yeah, your statement about going from, you ain't doing it all, so this is just much appreciated. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Anyone else?
My name is Randy Hamilton. I live in East Hartford, but my business is on the Berlin Turnpike. It's Image 360. I want to reiterate what Gail and Deanna have said, that we're in favor of this temporary signage change. And the impact that it's going to have, I believe, on our community is bigger than what any of us in here might see. I think Craig might have hit on it before, but the perceptions in this town can become a reality. And there's been a lot of negative perceptions of this town not being business friendly. And I hear it from a lot of business people that come in to buy signs, and I have a sign company. It won't affect my business that much as far as the temporary signs, but there's a lot of properties on the Berlin Turnpike and many other places that used to turn over faster. When somebody closed down, and 70-80% of businesses fail within the first 5 years, and there was always a cycling out and changing. I've done several signs on the Berlin Turnpike 4 and 5 times in the 21 years that I've been on the pike. So the perception that we're not business-friendly could be the reason, in part, as to why some of these places stay open. There's 5 open spaces in O'Neill Plaza. And I know it permeates throughout the rest of the Berlin Turnpike and other places. So I'm optimistic that with the flexibility that you guys have shown, it's going to make a difference. And I appreciate that, and I know the rest of the businesses people will also.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Anyone else?
Rose Lyons, 46 Elton Drive. As someone who has sat with Gail through the TPZ meetings regarding the signage many years before the chamber got involved in it, I know you worked hard to come up with something, and if maybe they had come forward sooner, I'm not faulting them for that. Maybe we should, or you should have reached out to them. It seems that you've come together to work it out for the betterment of the town and for the residents, because the residents too, not only the business owners, have some say in, or should have some say, or have had some say in how these signs are put out, and that's basically because of safety. One of the things I'd just like to ask about, and I am in favor of you doing this for them, I'm glad to see it come to be, and I hope it gets passed tonight. I heard Mr. Minor mention signs in the center of town in the business town center, and there's certain areas where the town manager is going to have to give permission. Is that, did I misunderstand, or?
Want me to speak to that?
Yeah, I'll have the planner answer that question right now.
Yes, okay. Let me show you what the revision is that I tried to describe earlier tonight. Okay, paragraph C. In the town centers zone and in the B zone, temporary ground signs may be permitted on the municipal sidewalk in front of the applicant's leased portion of the building where the town plan and zoning commission finds that such signs will not create excessive clutter nor impede pedestrians. All other provisions of section 622 shall apply. Actually, an earlier draft of that had specifically written into it that the town manager has to, or maybe that was just in my memo, but it must be approved by the town manager. I think we'll have to work that into the process somewhere, because since those sidewalks are town property, it's appropriate for the town manager to have the final say in whether a particular sign would be allowed in front of a store or not. I've already talked to her about that. She has no objection to that in principle, and I know over the years there have been the businesses that have restaurants and other stores along Main Street, the chicken restaurant and previous restaurants there have been able to let their customers sit out in front on town property, but on furniture on town property, and the town has allowed that. In fact, there is a mechanism that was started many years ago to formally allow that, and that's the mechanism that my plan is, if this goes forward, to work within that frame to make it possible for merchants to have temporary signs along Main Street and Market Square on town sidewalks.
Okay, I'm leading into this question because I know when they were planning on the municipal parking lot and talking about sidewalks, and I think I've discussed it here before, there is still some confusion as to what is town property and what actually belongs to the landlord mostly in the Constitution Square area, and I'm assuming that that's the business town center?
Well, the whole town center is in the town center.
Okay, but do you know where I'm going with this? Some of it's property owners and some of it would be the town manager.
Well, I wasn't envisioning, although actually maybe, I wasn't envisioning merchants wanting to have signs on the inner side, on the municipal parking lot side of those buildings, but I suppose they could. I just hadn't thought about that. I don't think there's a problem. I don't think the commission would have a problem with that, but.
5 feet from a doorway, so if there's a doorway on the back side of the buildings, and they have an A-frame within 5 feet of it, there's nothing wrong with that.
Right, it'll probably be on private property, because I don't think, there may be a few property lines that come right to the back of the building, but most of those property lines are probably at least 5 or 6 feet towards the parking lot, so that shouldn't be a...
We'll make that determination when they come into the Town Plan and Zoning Commission to show their plan. We'll determine where the where the sign is going to be, if it's going to be on private property or public property. If it's on public property, they're going to have to provide, why the town managers get involved, because they're going to have to provide with the town a certificate of insurance to hold the town harmless of any problems that could be created because of the sign is on the town property.
Like I say, with the municipal parking lot, I know when they held the ceremony back there, there was a handout, and it noted how many people had donated property to the town of Newington in that area. So I just raised the question only so that I've heard before that there's been some discussion as to what's private property and what's town property, and maybe it should be clarified at some point in time. Not now, it has nothing to do with this, but just...
When they come in, it'll be clarified
something.
through their application and their permit process.
Okay, thank you.
Anyone else from the public wishing to speak at this time on this matter? Okay, seeing none, it's up to the commission as to where you want to go with this at this point. I mean, if there are any questions or any comments, or Mr. Planner?
Can I just throw one thing out there?
Sure.
It was asked what would happen to the moratorium at this point, and what the moratorium actually says, which, and it was written this way for this reason. The last sentence of the moratorium paragraph reads, "This moratorium will expire on December 31st, 2017, or upon the adoption of revised temporary sign regulations, whichever comes first." So as soon as this amendment's adopted, the moratorium goes away automatically.
We would probably take a vote anyway to end the moratorium, just so it's on the record that we ended it. Okay, any other,
Suggest that we close this petition 24.
hang on a
Just
second.
real quick.
Commissioner Fox.
It was suggested that instead of 4 months, that we do 3 months, in other words, every quarter. But if you're doing it one after the other, as it says here, and you can, I don't see a difference. If any of you were thinking of it. Might make it easy for them to...
Mr. Planner, why don't you talk about how the fees are established?
Well, my understanding is right now there's little or no fee. When you apply for and we've done it this way because if the town charged a fee for a signed zoning permit, we would then have to collect additional funds because we have to collect all kinds of funds if there's a permit application fee. So what I believe, and I wish Mike were here, I believe the way we always handle it is when you apply for your sign permit from the building department, which is what you need because signs are pretty substantial structures. So you always need a building permit to be able to put up a sign. And anytime you apply for a building permit, the building inspector runs it by the zoning officer to make sure that whatever the building permit is for complies with the zoning regulations. So when someone applies for a sign, the building inspector refers it to the CEO, he looks it over, he makes sure that it meets the zoning regulations, checks the yes box, and the building permit process continues. So there really isn't a fee, as I understand it, from the zoning department to get a temporary or a wall-mounted sign, for that matter. I know sometimes we collect a fee for a statement of zoning compliance, but we don't. I don't think we charge. I don't think the zoning department charges the fee for sign permits. Just the building department.
The building
charges it.
departents charge a fee for.
Oh, yeah.
So.
Mm-hmm.
Can we get a clarification as to what that fee is and how it's structured for the next meeting when we act on this? So we know what the fees are.
Mm-hmm.
I also had a question about the right-of-way and the setback. Explain what that is.
Okay.
Yeah.
Go ahead, Mr.
Yeah, let me explain that. I see Deanna's gone. Well, I'll look you anyway. Your question was about the right-of-way versus the front yard setback. Let me think of a way to illustrate this. Okay, I think most people realize that when they're applying for a permit to build their house, the zoning regulations require that the house be at least 35 feet back from the front property line, which is an imaginary line in your lawn somewhere, usually 10 or 15 feet in from the curb. All right. So the land between the road itself and your property line, we call that the right-of-way, and that's either state property or town property, depending on whether it's a state road or town road. And from that, what I'm calling an imaginary line, the property boundary, that's your property boundary, and then from there, you measure 35 feet back, and that's where the building can be. So on the Berlin Turnpike, all buildings on the Berlin Turnpike have to be at least 35 feet back from their property line, but their property line, in many cases, is quite a few feet back from the curb, if you will. But under this rule, and anywhere else in town, you'll be able to put a temporary sign in the setback, in your front yard, if you will, but not on the Berlin.
No.
But not on the Berlin Turnpike.
Don't give that impression.
That they can put the sign anywhere they want. The sign can only be 5 feet from the door.
Oh, I'm sorry. Thank you very much, Mr. Vice Chairman. I forgot about that part. Yes. Okay. Thank you for
If
correcting me
people
on that.
think that they could get a temporary sign and put it anywhere in the right-of-way or the setback area or somewhere other than 5 feet from their door, they cannot. That's the provisions of this thing. This is one of the items that the Chamber of Commerce brought forward to us. Now they're talking about maybe changing from 5 feet to 10 feet. That's something that the commission will look at. But we haven't changed it hasn't changed where we're going to allow signs of someone in this portion of the building putting their sign in the right-of-way or 30 feet away somewhere else. It doesn't work, or an island in the parking lot. It doesn't work like that. It's 5 feet from the door.
Right. Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I forgot. That's how it used to be, but under this new provision, the sign has to be at least 5 feet from your front door. And along the Berlin Turnpike, even if your front door were right on the setback line, no signs are allowed in the front yard along the Berlin Turnpike, even if your door was right there. I know that's not making it clear, but
On the Berlin Turnpike, we have the right-of-way for the highway. And from that point onto that might extend, you might think it's your property, but it's actually state property. From that point to your, there's a 35... Let me restate this. From the right-of-way from the state what you're seeing is just a roadway. They own property beyond the roadway, and that's called the right-of-way. So on each side of the roadway is a portion of land that the state owns. Beyond that point where that line is, on the Berlin Turnpike, we have a 35-foot setback that's a green space. So that's the portion where we never allowed signs in the setback or the right-of-way. So I think it's clarified with the 5 foot from the door. I mean, that's pretty self-explanatory. Okay, anything else, Mr. Planner?
no, that's all I have.
Okay.
Mr. Chairman,
Yes.
I'd like to make a motion that we close petition 24-17.
Second.
Got a motion made and second. Any comments or questions? Seeing none, you want to move it to, how do you want to move it? To
Next meeting.
Okay, we'll move it to the next meeting for action. We want to get the fee schedule worked out so we know what that is, and we want to talk about the length of time and the distance from the doorway. So we'll talk about those in our deliberations, and we'll make a determination at the next meeting.
Okay.
So for our next meeting is when?
August 30th.
August 30th. So hopefully that night we'll have a resolution and move forward. Okay, Mr. Vice Chairman, can you please read petition 2517?
Petition 25-17, special permit, section 3.15.4, drive-through restaurant at 3240 Berlin Turnpike, Chick-fil-A. Chick-fil-A Incorporated applicant, Ruby Back LLC owner, Susan A. Hayes, 100 Pearl Street, Hartford, Connecticut, contact.
The applicant here, I see you have plenty of applicants.
Well, we have 3 applications here this evening, so we needed at least 3 people, and we actually have 4.
Okay. Now, you've been in before, we had discussed about, to try to help move the process, we discussed some areas where we tried to give you some input as to, so that you could move forward with the project. That's where we are at this point.
Yes, correct. And we have 2 public hearings tonight. The first public hearing, which we'll talk about at this point in time, is the special permit for the drive-through restaurant. The next public hearing will be special permit for the sign. And then we also have the site plan application, which will be coming after the hearings are closed. Unfortunately, just because of the nature of the discussions and then the requirements under, the special permit sections of the regulations, there will be some overlap between the first hearing and the site plan application, but we'll try to keep the overlap to a minimum so that we're not just repeating what we've said. But I am Susan Hayes with Updike, Kelly and Spellacy, 100 Pearl Street, Hartford, Connecticut. I have here tonight with me Scott Goodson, who's from Chick-fil-A, and he'll be talking tonight, giving you a little bit about the operations of the facility and some of the Chick-fil-A philosophy, that type of stuff. I have Tony Donato, who was here at the last meeting that we were at, who's an engineer with Bowler Engineering, and he'll walk you through the site and all of that type of stuff. And then I have Jason Adams, who's with McMahon, right? McMahon. Too many names here. McMahon, who's our traffic engineer. So who'll be able to speak to you just very briefly about traffic circulation and traffic impact with respect to that. So just brief introduction. As you're aware, this is at the Lowe's Plaza, for lack of a better name, and it is going to be located at the site of the now closed Ruby Tuesday. And what we are proposing to do is basically to demolish the Ruby Tuesday and build a Chick-fil-A restaurant that will be just a foot or two under, I believe, 5,000 square feet. We were able to keep the parking space number the same. If you recall, we were in here, we were talking about how could we do that, and this commission was kind enough to basically adopt a policy that would allow us to do permeable grass pavers for parking, and to allow that to count towards the landscaping requirements for the site. So the site that's in front of you meets all of the zoning requirements, all of the zoning regulations that are applicable to the site, and keeps the bigger center in compliance with the zoning regulations. As we discussed the last time around, when the center was originally approved, it was approved under a section of the zoning regulations that basically said, even though there are 4 different parcels of land, we're going to treat this as one from a development perspective for things like coverage, landscaping, open space, yards, and all of that type of stuff. So we have not adversely impacted the overall center, and our site itself also complies with the requirements of the regulations. So with that, what I'd like to do is just pass this over to Scott and have him talk a little bit about Chick-fil-A.
Good evening, members of the commission. Thank you for your time this evening. I'm Scott Goodson with Chick-fil-A. I'm a development manager. I work on our new restaurants for Chick-fil-A. I just want to thank you for allowing us to come and present this evening. If you don't mind me asking, how many of you have had a Chick-fil-A sandwich before, just by show of hands? Just curious who is. So a few of you. So thank you for your business and for coming by a Chick-fil-A restaurant. For those of you that have not had a Chick-fil-A sandwich before, we hope that here in Newington you'll be able to try that shortly after this presentation and the proceedings. Just want to share a little bit of Chick-fil-A's history and background, because we are a new brand in this area. Our first freestanding location such as this opened in 2014 in the New England area. And so we've got quite a few in the Connecticut area now. But Truett Cathy was our founder. I want to just start with how he founded Chick-fil-A, because I think it's a big part of how we continue to operate and what customers see when they come to a Chick-fil-A restaurant today. In 1946, he opened his first restaurant called the Dwarf Grill. He served a lot of shift work employees from Delta Airlines, Eastern Airlines, and Ford Motor Company near the Atlanta airport. He had an operation that was 6 days a week, 24 hours a day, and he lived right next door to the restaurant. And so in the middle of the night, when he heard gravel, heard cars pulling up, he jumped out of bed and was working the grill, serving his customers. He knew their favorite orders. He knew their names. When they had something great happened in their lives, or a funeral, or someone passed away in their life, he was the first one there to either celebrate with them or give them a hug and bring food to them as well. He just had that kind of a relationship with his customers. And he's created a lot of the recipes that we use today in our restaurants, such as the famous original chicken sandwich that we have now. He was trying to figure out how to sell that, how to license it, what to do with it. He chose to go into business with an individual, and she became the first operator for Chick-fil-A, and we opened the first Chick-fil-A branded restaurant in Greenbrier Mall in 1967. What's unique about Chick-fil-A is that he wanted to replicate the model where he ran a restaurant for 21 years, and he was a restaurateur. He knew his customers, and at each restaurant that we opened, it's one operator in one location, and we want them to have that operator agreement and be a small business owner that is invested in the town, invested in the people, knows their team members, knows their customers, and that's what's really important about Chick-fil-A. We grew through the 60s and 70s and 80s through malls. We were actually the first food court in America in Greenbrier Mall as we started that. In 1986, our first freestanding restaurant, similar to what you see today with a drive-through and a dine-in facility, was created in Atlanta, and we have grown primarily through freestanding restaurants since then. We've got a little over 2,100 restaurants across America now. We'll be in 47 states at the end of this year, so we have grown considerably since the early days. If you were to ask our customers today, what do they love about Chick-fil-A, or what would they say about Chick-fil-A? It's that our food is always fresh. Our food is hand-prepared in the restaurant each and every day. Our chicken is hand-breaded. Our salads are made fresh in the restaurant every day. Our lemonade is lemons sliced in half, hand-squeezed, and it's lemons, water, and sugar. It's lemons, water, and Splenda if you want diet lemonade. And so it's very just simple ingredients, the way you would make things in your own home. And so that's, I think, the secret really to our food. The other thing that customers would tell you is our customer service. We've become famous for the phrase, "my pleasure." So when you walk in, you'll get greeted by our team members. You'll see a smile. They'll make eye contact with you. Even after you order, they'll offer to carry your tray to the table. We'll often have a host or a hostess in the dining room who offer to refresh your beverage, offer to take the trash from your table if you're enjoying a conversation with friends, so you can have a clean table to enjoy sitting at. Things that you don't see in the fast food and quick service industry that we still do day in and day out. And then the other thing that you'll hear from our customers is that we give back. And one of the things that a lot of people have been hearing about this year is that we've revamped our team member scholarship as Chick-fil-A wants to invest in our team members. There's actually a scholarship for our team members now for $2,500 a year for 4 years for $10,000 towards financial assistance towards their college degree as well. And so it's a way that we want to invest in our team members and in the communities that we go to. And so I think that's just a little bit of an overview of Chick-fil-A as a brand, what we're about, and it's really about our customer service, our fresh food, and being a positive influence in the communities that we're in.
Okay, great. Can you, Susan, take into consideration the special permit requirements and the regulations?
Yes.
And go over those?
Yep.
And that's basically under this portion where we want to be
Right.
concentrating.
Exactly, and looking at the drive-through restaurant regulations, the things that we're looking at are traffic impact analysis, the design of the site. When I flip over to the special permit standards, we talk about the need for the proposed use, the size and type location of the buildings, traffic circulation, availability of public water and sewer, displays and signs, safeguards, that type of stuff. So we will get through all of that, and I'm going to start that with asking Tony to run through the site with you.
Okay.
Thank you, Susie. Good evening. My name is Anthony Donato with Bowler Engineering. Good. Thank you, Mr. Chair and members of the board. Here's our site plan, and it's a 1.3 acre site. As you're familiar with, it's next to Outback and Lowe's. It's located on its own parcel. The restaurant size is 4,998 square feet. We're proposing 118 indoor seats and 16 outdoor seasonal seats. 66 spaces will be provided on the site. Hours of operation for both the dining room and the drive-thru will be from 6:30 a.m. to 10:30 p.m. 10 o'clock at night. The drive-through area will consist of a dual order canopies here that merge into a single lane, and it will pull up to a single cash window that also dispenses product. to the customers. The circulation is counterclockwise around here, and as well, the site, there will be two entrance driveways, one at the south end of the parcel and then another at the north end in between the Outback and our location. And there will be a one-way direction in front of the store, providing 4 accessible spaces directly in front of the premises.
I want to stop,
Excuse me?
a lot of this stuff is site plan material. Why don't you just go right through the checklist and say, the need, why didn't you think the need, go right through the checklist, give us the answers for each one of those, and that would be sufficient under this portion of special permit.
Okay.
Sure, okay.
And then, because we're going to be overlapping a lot of this information from your site plan. Is that correct, Mr. Planner?
That's okay. That's good.
Oh, okay, yeah, that's fine, and I guess what I do want to, looking through this, I'm looking at the drive-through criteria, first of all. Guess we bored them. You have in your package the traffic impact analysis, which basically indicates that there is no adverse impact from the development of the site as a drive-through restaurant. The driveway locations are more than 150 feet away from the closest intersection. The drive-through windows are only on one site of the proposed restaurant building, and they're on the opposite side, basically, of where you enter and exit. The pedestrians will enter and exit the building. And we're more than 300 feet away from any residential neighborhood. It always interests me when you look at something that says, what is the need for a restaurant, and I know there's another town that's quite close to here that basically, you have to bring economists and restaurateurs and all sorts of stuff for an analysis of that. But from our perspective, this was a restaurant. And it is the perfect location for this type of restaurant. I know Jason's going to say she's crazy. There's a gazillion cars that drive by here every day, both on the way to work, on their way home from work, and traveling up and down the turnpike to do their shopping. So it's a perfect location for this type of restaurant where people can stop in for lunch, for dinner, pick something up on their way home, pick something up on their way to work. And it's not a restaurant that you guys have yet in town. So I think that there actually is a need in this location. It is on the Berlin Turnpike, so when you talk about the impact on the future character of the neighborhood, this, again, it was a restaurant. It will continue to be a restaurant. It fits in perfectly fine with the character of the Berlin Turnpike. There are restaurants all along as you go up and down the Berlin Turnpike. The size, type, and location of the main accessory buildings we are basically building on the footprint of the existing building. I believe we're a little bit smaller than the existing building, but we're basically going right where that building was. Traffic circulation, Tony had described to you the traffic circulation, and I can have Jason briefly make a statement that says the traffic circulation is safe, so that we can get that onto the record. But we basically spent quite a bit of time, as you know, we spent quite a bit of time trying to make sure everything worked and fit, making sure that the circulation would work both from a truck traffic, from a customer passenger vehicle perspective, from trash removal perspective, and we believe that the circulation that we have is the best that you could get on the site. The site is served by public water and sewer. To the best of our knowledge, there is capacity out there. There was a restaurant there, so there shouldn't be any issues with respect to that. I did have a conversation with Mike Curley at the MDC, just to let him know that we were, going to be replacing one restaurant with another, and was there anything special that he wanted us to do before getting approval, and he said no. Obviously we'll have to come in and do the normal permitting, but he didn't think that there was going to be any issues with that. Signs, we will be addressing our freestanding sign in the next public hearing, but all building signs will be, I believe, as the town planner mentioned, building signs go to the building department for approval, and we will follow that. All signs on the site will be in compliance with the zoning regulations. The lighting and the landscaping are all in compliance with the zoning regulations, and I think that's about it from that perspective. So if I could just have Jason make a quick statement.
Go ahead.
Thanks. For the record, Jason Adams. I'm a traffic engineer with McMahon Associates, 45 Bromfield Street in Boston. And as Susie said, we did take a look at the circulation and layout of the site and do feel that it will operate in a safe and efficient manner for all potential vehicles on the site, including delivery trucks and emergency vehicles, as Susie stated. So I can certainly answer any questions that you may have about circulation and that type, but from a traffic perspective, we feel that the site is laid out in an appropriate fashion.
We might have questions under the site plan. Sure. Looks like you've covered all of the requirements for a special permit. So, you have anything else to add?
No, only that we hope you will approve it, and we are looking forward to being here in the town of Newington.
Okay. Any commissioner comments?
Yes, the plans are well done. I'm very impressed with them. I don't see any issues at this point.
Any other commissioner comments? Okay, seeing none, we're going to ask you to sit down, and we'll ask the public to comment, and then we'll move into the next one. So is there anyone here from the public wishing to speak in favor of this application? Please come forward, state your name and address for the record. Is there anyone in opposition to this application? Okay, seeing none.
Mr. Chairman, I'd like to make a motion that we close petition 25-17, public hearing, and move it to old business for action for tonight.
Second.
Motion made and second. Mr. Planner, is there any outstanding issues with the special permit?
No.
Okay. Any commissioner remarks on the motion? All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Okay, we'll be putting this on to old business for action. Can you please come forward and, Mr. Vice Chairman, please read the next petition, 2617, for the same applicant.
Petition 26-17, special permit, section 6.2.4, freestanding sign, drive-through restaurant at 3240 Berlin Turnpike, Chick-fil-A. Chick-fil-A Incorporated applicant, Ruby Back LLC owner, Susan A. Hayes, 100 Pearl Street, Hartford, Connecticut. Contact.
Okay, do we have elevations or pictures or something?
Is there one? Is there one on the stick? Tony, is there one on the stick?
The freestanding sign?
Yeah.
All I have is this handout right here.
There's not one on the stick? Oh, okay.
Yeah, thank you.
Yeah.
If you have an extra one, just put it out, so if anyone from the public wishes to see it, they could come up and look at it. Okay.
I have a big, I have not as big, but bigger.
Here you go.
I need the bigger one so I can actually read them.
Thank you, Craig.
Okay. Do you need to read anything, or can we just start?
Yeah, go ahead.
Okay, all right, sorry, okay. Susan Hayes, Updike, Kelly, and Spellacy, 100 Pearl Street, Hartford, Connecticut. And basically, this is an application for a special permit for a freestanding sign. The regulations do allow in a freestanding business sign for each individual parcel. This parcel is, although part of the shopping center, it is a separate parcel. The regulations allow freestanding signs that are 18 feet in height and 150 square feet on one side, or 300 square feet on both sides. And what we are proposing is a sign that is, let me just get my information here, sign that is 12 feet in height, and it will total 70 square feet as opposed to 150 feet. So basically, we're looking for a smaller sign, lower in height and smaller in size than would otherwise be permitted. Interestingly, when we were talking about what kind of sign and what size sign, lower is better for us, because as you drive along the Berlin Turnpike, if you look at the site, you'll see the lovely row of trees that run along the front of the property, and so a higher sign would be blocked by the trees. So we went with a lower sign that you could see it as you were as you're driving along underneath the trees. And within the size 46.75 square feet will be the actual sign and the reader board, and then the rest of that square footage, I believe, is the base of the sign.
What do you put on the reader board? Like, what do you have, like today's specials or something, or?
Yeah. Come see our milkshakes. It's and listening to your earlier discussion regarding the McDonald's, it is not digital, correct?
Correct. Okay.
Yeah.
So they would manually have to go out there and change the letters?
Yes.
Okay. That's what is allowed under the current regulations?
Right. Yes.
Okay, we're happy that you didn't go to the 18 feet too, so a lower sign for us is better, smaller sometimes is better for us.
Yeah. And I think it would actually be visible. And even though we do have signs on the building, I think when we talk about the need for this sign, I think what we will find is that the trees will actually block a good part of the building even. So we want to make sure that people know where we are
Can you show
as
us
they
on
drive
the
by.
site plan where the sign is so we could make a determination that you're not obstructing sight lines?
It's located right by, next to the drive-through entrance, outside the 35-foot landscape buffer.
Is it this little blue thing here?
Correct.
Okay, and in comparison to the driveway comes out the other 30, it's beyond there's 35 feet at least from the sign to the roadway.
There's 35 feet, and then there's the whole entire right-of-way.
Right.
Yeah.
Okay, so.
I mean, I was the one who...
We're way back.
I was the one who actually posted the public hearing sign that was out there and measuring things off and looking at the sign, and, I posted it and I thought, good Lord, it's so far back, I'm not sure that anybody's even going to be able to see it, but that was outside, it was outside of the DOT right-of-way.
Okay.
35 feet and 6 inches from the property line.
Good, okay. So you're basically 70 feet from the roadway.
I would, looking at that, where the edge of pavement is, we're probably talking about that distance.
Yeah. Okay.
And just, I guess the only other thing just to say is that the sign will be internally illuminated.
Right.
With fluorescent bulbs.
And there's no really any lettering saying that it's a Chick-fil-A, it's just the logo.
It's the logo, yes.
Okay.
And then we're going to have a big cow up front. I'm only kidding.
Okay, if you're finished, we'll open it up to the public. Anyone from the public wishing to speak in favor of this application? Anyone in opposition to this application? Seeing none, any commissioner remarks or comments? Payne?
Mr. Chairman, I'd like to make a motion that we close petition 26-17 and move it to old business for action for tonight.
Second.
Motion made and seconded. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Okay, that ends the public portion of the agenda. We'll go into the rest of the agenda. This under new business, there's another Chick-fil-A site plan review, so that'll be coming up after we approve the minutes of June 28th. Well, we deleted that portion. Okay, so we're into new business. Mr. Vice Chairman, please read the petition 2717.
New business petition 27-17, site plan approval, drive-through restaurant at 3240 Berlin Turnpike, Chick-fil-A Incorporated. Applicant, Ruby Beck LLC. Owner, Susan A. Hayes, 100 Pearl Street, Hartford, Connecticut is the contact.
Okay, can you please come back up? And this is where you give us the presentation that you've already started. And keep in mind that we've already seen this application once before, so.
Sure, I'll keep it real brief and I'll leave where I left off, which is basically, I would like to just go over the landscaping here. And as we mentioned, there's a bunch of mature trees located within the 35-foot landscape buffer that will remain. What we are proposing are 150 new trees and shrubs that will be planted on the site. We will incorporate LID with the design of 2 mini bioretention areas to be located, collect runoff from the parking area and the drive-through lane, and improve the stormwater management for the site. So if you have any other questions on what I had previously talked about, the other petition, I'd be happy to answer them for you.
Okay, we just, for the traffic engineer, just give us a brief description of the drive-through and the queuing, and what your opinion is of not having cars backing up into the parking area, and if there's enough queuing, and what your opinion is as a traffic engineer.
Sure. Again, for the record, Jason Adams with McMahon Associates, 45 Bromfield Street in Boston. On top of looking at the circulation and layout of the site, we also did review the expected operations of the drive-through. There is room to stack 18 vehicles in the drive-through, which we feel is an adequate number to serve.
That's before the menu board. What's before the menu board?
Tony, do you know that? Do you have the?
That's the menu board, yeah. So there's there's two lanes for.
10, I'd say about 10 cars, 10.
So there's two
Right,
lanes.
five in each lane.
Okay. You think that's adequate? We don't want them backing up into the parking area.
Correct, and we have, Chick-fil-A has conducted counts of existing facilities to understand what the potential demand is and expected demand of the drive-through, and what we observed at 2 other sites in New England is a maximum number of stacked cars at 15. So what we are providing is for 18 vehicles here. So we do feel it will serve the demand of the site.
Okay, what, beyond the menu boards to the pickup window, where's the pickup window on this plan? That's the pickup window?
Correct.
And how many cars can stack there?
So from the pickup board,
Yeah,
back to the
right.
board?
Yeah.
8.
8?
8 vehicles essentially around the building.
Okay, and that would only be single file?
Correct.
Okay. We're just concerned that we don't want them back in, because we know how successful some of these restaurants are, where they did have problems where the queuing wasn't enough.
Right, and Chick-fil-A doesn't want those backing up and interfering with their operations either. That's
What percentage of, do you have an idea of what percentage of people go through the drive-through compared to how many people come inside and eat?
about 50 to 60% would go through the drive-through.
So it's a lot of drive-through.
A fair amount, yes.
Okay. Any commissioner comments on that queuing, Stanley?
No, I says this should work with no problem. I actually, when we get down to what the traffic engineer did on the back side here with the movement plans, that's what should be required in everybody that comes through here. This is a fantastic traffic engineering play, what he did here.
We'll keep that in mind because you're the traffic guy for us, so.
No, there shouldn't be any problems with this. It looks well.
Yeah, well, that's good to hear from someone that worked for the DOT for so many years. Any other commissioner comments on that?
Just opened one in West Hartford on New Park Avenue, and the traffic goes around the parking lot and out into the travel lane coming into the plaza. It did that for about 3 months. Now it's just inside the parking lot. So what's going to happen here, it will back up because you have a great product.
Well, they'll be backing up into their own parking lot, which will interfere with their other operation, which we're concerned about too.
Correct. When the store first opens, there'll be a surge in.
One more thing. I just came up from South Carolina, and we stopped 3 times at Chick-fil-A for my kids. And it went around the parking lot 2 times. These have been there for years. And there's no way around it. It's just a lot of people go to Chick-fil-A. And what we ended up doing, my wife went inside, and I just stayed in the line, and I came back around, and I picked her up on the way out. That's how long it took. So.
Susan, you want to just
Oh, well,
a little more comfortable?
Yeah, well, just a couple
It's
things.
your operation, and it's Chick-fil-A's operation. We want it to be successful in Newington. We don't want cars backing up out into
like Krispy Kreme.
into Lowe's parking lot.
No, and neither do we. And I know that I think Newington was the first place that Krispy Kreme came
They
in
were
the
on the
state
Berlin
of.
Turnpike
Oh, it was
for a mile.
that was insane. I remember that when that happened. There are a couple of things. I actually live just down the street from the one in West Hartford, and I must go by there at times different from when you're there, because I don't think I've ever and I've gone there myself. I don't think I've ever seen, quite frankly, more than like 6 or 7 cars in a line. Now, I'm at the office at lunchtime, so that may be when it's busy. I do go there because I go to BJ's over there on Saturday afternoons. But from our perspective, from an operational perspective, if you recall when we came in here and we were talking about the number of parking spaces that we had to have versus what was required under zoning versus what we were proposing to do, we are significantly overparked from the zoning perspective and an operational perspective of what we wanted. So if we were to have backups, we would still have sufficient parking spaces for people who would want to park and come in and eat, as opposed to like people saying, "Oh my God, there's no place to park. Now we're going to go park over at Lowe's, or we're going to go park over at Outback, or we're going to go park somewhere else," because we have 66 spaces, and I believe under zoning we're only required to have, I think, 49. So we're overparked from that perspective. I do know that from an operational perspective, one of the things that they also do, and Scott, maybe you can come up and correct me or kick me if I'm wrong, is when you have really busy times, they will have people who will actually go out, and you're not just waiting till you get to the drive-through. They will have people who will go out, who will take your order, who will take your money, who will bring you your food, so that they can make the experience move a little bit faster than it might otherwise do so. And you've got your own mic.
Yes, Susie, you're right on. And with many of our older stores in the South Carolina areas, things of that nature, we're starting to actually change how we design the kitchens when we go back to do remodels to account for the larger volumes. And so even with a new store like this, it's designed to handle those peak hour time frames. And by separating the drive-through traffic from the walk-in traffic, by having an isolated drive-through like we have here, is really our preferred way to separate those two movements. It simplifies the movement around the site. We are starting to actually use team members in our drive-through lane areas to actually expedite orders, to expedite the ordering process and giving the orders out, so there's less movements at the window. It's only handing food out. You're not having to worry about payment and things of that nature at that point. And so we are working as technology changes to be able to do that in different manners, along with things like mobile apps, things of that nature.
You actually had people down south that had tablets, and they were taking orders 6 cars before he got to the queue. It was pretty amazing. And then the lines did move. It was just a lot of traffic.
Yeah, I went by there the other day, and when they first opened, they were loaded with vehicles because it's something new. But as it's worn in a little bit, it's not bad now. The driving pattern that West Hartford instituted in that area is a crossing pattern, which means you got to come into the lot, come around, and cross again to go into, this is a better movement, much better. I believe this also stacks more vehicles than the one in West Hartford does.
Good.
Yeah, we on the West Hartford one, we actually, they forced us, I shouldn't say forced us, what their desire was, which we complied with, was to pull the restaurant right up onto the street, which, when you can't have the circulation around the building, you end up with a very odd sort of drive-through situation. I guess I'll just leave it at that.
And I did see other people, when they first opened, people with the tablets going out and actually getting orders to speed the vehicles through there, so.
So we're going to expect that when you first open, that there might be some QE problems and it might be some backup in the thing. But we want you to be successful. We want you to be that successful. We got them backed up that. So we'll expect that.
Yeah, and
while it's a novelty until it wears in.
And at the grand opening time as well, we will actually have team members from other Chick-fil-A restaurants across the country come help in basically the first month.
Yeah.
And so there's usually about 30 to 40 team members from other restaurants assisting those team members as they get up to speed, and it tapers off over the first month so they can be fully trained and get up to speed. And obviously there's still a time frame even after that in the first 6 months or so that it takes a team time to get operationally, get their speed up as well. And so, but we try to give those resources to help them get up to speed. But definitely it will normalize. But we feel like that this parking lot can handle the demand both at the peak rush and long term.
Okay, we wanted it on the record so that
thank you.
When you do open, and if there's any questions from the public, we've covered it under our
thank you.
Application. Mr. Planner, is there anything that you see that we should be talking about?
No, I just want to mention that the engineering staff has reviewed the original submission, sent a couple pages of comments to Mr. Donato, and I believe he's working on revisions, which I don't think we've gotten yet, the revised plans.
We submitted one set of revisions. We got some additional comments this afternoon, and we were attempting to get the engineer before the meeting tonight, and we're not successful at doing that. I don't know if you want to just talk about what those comments were.
There were some comments with regards to the drainage and the bioretention area that we're looking to address, just how the report was run, and then just looking at what was contributing to the bioretention areas. We meet the intent of the bylaw that we're providing LID treatment of the amount of increased impervious for the site. The town engineer is asking for a little bit more, and we can certainly work with him with that and prepare a final plan to his liking.
Okay, thank you.
Okay. You see any problem moving forward with this with some stipulations as far as the engineer's report?
I'm not that familiar with what the issues are. I know they are drainage related, but I don't know. I just don't know how detailed they are. So I don't have any objection to closing the hearings, which you've already done. But I would suggest we keep we not actually act on the site plan though until the next meeting.
Commissioner remarks on that? Is this in relation to the LID, most of these comments?
No, again, there was one question on how we ran the peak storm on it, which we don't anticipate a major change or any really changes to the drainage. It's just the model that we had run. And then he would ask for redirecting some of the roof water into one of the bioretention areas. We do want to talk to him. He had concerns about the heat from the roof, bringing up the temperature of the stormwater, contributing to the ultimate where it outflows to the final body of water. But we do provide a white roof for the building and don't anticipate much of a problem with this. or addressing his comments.
He was concerned with the temperature of the water coming off the roof going into the LID?
Well, no, he'd asked us to direct it into the LID so that, try to reduce the temperature of the water running off the roof, rather than directly going into the stormwater
The water
system.
off the roof
It's
right
clean.
now, is going into the storm drainage
Correct,
presently.
correct.
And what would be the concern if the water was 10 degrees hotter than normal? I mean, what, it's going into a sewer. I mean, I don't understand.
There's been studies
What's the
that
logic? What do you think?
downstream-
What's the engineering logic behind that? You're an engineer.
Well, downstream, where ultimately where the outfall is, where the final body of water that it contributes to, but in this case, I believe there's another detention pond on the back of the site.
Where it
But-
would sit.
Where it
cool
would sit,
off.
correct.
By the time it got there, it would cool
It's
off.
really a minor issue. I mean, I could see if it was directly discharged into a pond or something else, but this is discharging, ultimately, this stormwater for the whole parcel discharges to a man-made stormwater pond behind the Lowe's.
So the main
What is the difference, excuse me, Dominic, what is the difference between what you're proposing and what you're doing now compared to what the Ruby Tuesday did? I mean, as far as drainage is concerned. The only thing we're doing now is add an LID.
Correct.
Is that correct?
That is correct.
Okay, and we've discussed that at a previous meeting, that we're aware of the conditions in the town of Newington, and we want you to go as far as you can with the LID, but sometimes people can't meet the intent of what we have in that regulation because it just doesn't work. So we expected you to bring it to the highest point you could, but I'm not going to hold this up because of the temperature of the water.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. And like I said, we do address, we
What,
do
is
meet the
there any
LID requirements.
other items that he was concerned about?
Again, there was just with regards to how we ran our model and our program, how the length of the storm, but we don't anticipate any changes with the analysis on that.
If this was not an existing site with an existing restaurant and pretty much the same thing, I would be very concerned. If this was a vacant piece of property, I would be very concerned about it, of how the drainage was handled. But this, you're just replacing one building with another one. And it worked for all these years. I think we might be going a little too far with it.
So the water coming off the roof, you have it proposed to go into the catch basins, which is then going into detention ponds. He'd rather have it go into the LID, is that correct?
He'd asked for a portion of the roof to go into the LID.
Okay. Does that propose any major problems for you?
We would have to perhaps make the LID a little bigger.
You're talking about the pond in the corner? The rain garden?
Correct, yes.
The lower right-hand corner?
I have some concerns, Mr. Chairman. I mean, we don't even have a town engineer. We have a company working for us, and I think they're getting a little too crazy on the LID. And I would either want that engineer in here, or I'd like to move this forward, but I want the town planner to express to the town engineer, that is, the company that's acting as town engineer, to loosen up a little bit on the LID, because I think he's carrying it way too far.
I would rather have the rainwater directly into the sewer system to go into the retention pond instead of going into the LID. I mean, you have a detention pond for specifically for this whole complex, and I just don't see what we're doing here that is different from that's been going on there for the last 25 years. It's almost like you're knocking the building down, putting the same building up, and you should be able to just connect everything. It should be the same. We're recreating the wheel here. This LID gets to the point where we want you to do as much as we can I think you've done that. We talked about it at previous meetings. I don't want to belabor it and having it start making these rain gardens bigger than the building.
If
Camillo.
you have one of these prolonged rainstorms and you have the water coming off the roof going into the LID, that pond on the corner where the exit, will it overflow into the road?
No, there's an overflow.
Probably an outflow.
A good question. There's a overflow structure located within the LID that will take any excess storm into the closed drainage system.
Thank you.
Does it make sense? It doesn't make sense to me that we have the LID to try to take some water from the site and retain it on site. But then we have a retention basin that controls the entire site. That's where I would rather see the water go than percolating onto the site. I don't know, it just...
Well, I can speak to that. One of the philosophies of LID, one of the catchphrases with the slogans is trying to recreate nature, trying to let a site work the way it used to work. And back before this site was developed, a raindrop that fell on that corner soaked into the ground on that corner. So one of the principles, one of the goals of LID is to recreate nature as much as reasonable, as much as practical. And so that's why this rain garden is being introduced here, instead of, like, for the past 25 years, all the water just rushing to one spot on this 25-acre site. This would then allow a more dispersion of the runoff.
That detention is not a dry detention, it's a wet detention pond. So the water just sits there, and some of it evaporates, some of it sinks down to the ground naturally, and then when there's an overflow, it passes through. So it's similar to an LID being a wet detention area.
Yeah, it's your father's LID, but it's not 21st century LID. 21st century LID is to distribute it more.
And we talked about this clearly, where Newington is mostly clay, and that we're carrying this LID to too much of a degree. Okay, you can only do so much with the land that we have, and we also have a situation here where this was an existing building. I think the engineer that has been hired doesn't have a clear understanding of what we expect for the LID, and that he's taken it to a certain degree that's too far.
Okay.
Well, where are we with this
Well, it's a new application. This is the first time you've seen it.
But I want to move this application. I mean, this is the second time they came in. This is basically the second time I've seen this as a site plan review. I mean, it's time to move it.
But it's the first time the engineering staff saw it. They didn't see it before.
Okay, but the questions that they're bringing up, we don't feel are valid.
Well, we're not sure what they are. I mean, no disrespect to the applicants, but they've characterized it one way. I don't know if the engineer were here, he would characterize it the same way.
If it makes life easier, I can pull it up on my email and read it, if that's, if
And then your eyes will really cross, because it's a really complicated engineering talk, but if that matters. But
yeah, I mean, if somebody wants to, actually hear what the comments were.
Well, I think the point is the engineering staff, they're still reviewing it. It's up to you, but
We've approved things before with things not totally complete on engineering, where they would work the things out. But I'm all for waiting, because if it gets too carried away, maybe the engineer should be here at our next meeting, because if we have engineering questions, we're going to need them here.
Yeah, because I'm not willing to allow them carte blanche on this to make those determinations that the heat of the roof it has determined. I mean, I don't see the engineering behind it. I'm an engineer. I went to engineering school, so you have to have some logic when you make determinations too, and that doesn't make any sense to me at all. But if he could, maybe he should be here to tell us what his rationale is, or what he's thinking, and how he perceives the, what the intent of that LID regulation is. It just bothers me because it was an existing site, and we're not doing anything different than what is already there. And it worked. We never had complaints there of overflow onto the street or problems with drainage for that whole plaza. I've never heard of any problems at all. Because they do have a retention pond that is probably too big for the site anyway. What's your time period here? What is your time? You must have a schedule that you're trying to meet. We were trying to expedite this because this is the second time that I've seen this application, and we would like to see this moved forward. But what is your schedule?
Our time frame would be to submit for building permit this fall, and with winter, I know it's weird to say that in August, but in the construction world, winter's not that far away, and so we would not be able to start construction this fall. We would be looking to hopefully maybe do our demolition this fall or this winter of the existing building, and actually start construction as soon as we're able in March or April, pending the weather.
That's what your schedule is now?
That is our weather. That is our schedule. Obviously, we would like to have building permit possible in hand, really, by January at the latest, so that way it's a clean start.
We're not talking that far off. Our next meeting is
August 30th.
August 30th, and we would make a decision. But with the cloud of this engineering, I want to take the advice of the planner and move in. If that's your schedule, then I don't think we're hurting you. Okay.
No, I think we're fine. And there was the other comment just on the calculations, which these guys, we're going to talk to the engineer, we're going to run the numbers the way he wants them. I'm going to want the engineer
here to explain to us, because I'm not willing to give him carte blanche on this to make those determinations on the LID and the dumping of the water. And I need to know what he is thinking and what he is saying, where he's come from, where the town's position is on it. And I think it's overkill a little bit between me and you, so. But we'll find that out. Maybe he has a legitimate, something that we're overlooking or we're not privy to, but, so can you have him here if
Yeah, I can
or a
ask.
report from him or something? I think he better be here, because we're gonna, from the indication from these members here, it looks like that we're gonna move it forward without some of the recommendations from the engineer. And I'd like to give him the opportunity to tell us what he's thinking. Commissioner Payne.
No, I was just going to say, Mr. Chairman, unless the items are so, the applicant and the engineer work out those last few items and there is nothing to discuss, then we won't need them here. If those little things are worked out in a speedy fashion and there's no complications between the applicant and the engineer, then it's not necessary, I guess. But
Can you have a conversation with the engineer
Absolutely.
and discuss what our concerns as a commission is and what we're thinking? And you know our position on LID. We tried, and I told him at the last meeting, I want you to go as far as you humanly possibly can, but if you can't meet every dotted I and crossed T in that regulations, we're not going to hold you to them crazy standards. We want you to do as much as you possibly can, but if you can't do it, you can't do it. And I don't want to start expanding those retention basins or those LID rain gardens.
I think it is important to note that that what we have proposed does in fact meet the LID requirements. He just wanted a little bit more.
Well, I want a lot of things done.
But no, we'll work with him over the next
If you could,
3 weeks.
If you could
Exactly
make it
3
work
weeks.
without him, if he's digs his heels in, and I need him here to explain, so I know his side of the story. I'm only getting your side, so I want to hear where he's coming from as far as
Certainly, we'll work with him between now and the next meeting.
So, Mr. Vice Chairman,
Yep.
can you
Yep.
move
Have we gone
close
to public? This is a site plan.
site plan? So we're
Okay,
just
so-
going to move it to old business, Mr. Planner?
Yeah, I recommend that.
So we'll move it to old business for the next meeting, and hopefully we don't have to have them come, you guys can work it out, and you'll let the planner know before the meeting if you do that, and then we'll be able to proceed. But we're still going to go ahead and move the special permit and the sign.
Okay, great, thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay, Dominic, old business. So we're going to bring up under old business petition 2517 and 2617.
Do we have any motion?
No.
I think, is there any conditions under the special permit that you could see?
No, I didn't hear any coming from the commissioner's comments, and staff doesn't have any.
Okay, just move it without any conditions.
Okay, I move petition 24-17.
No, 2517.
Oh, I'm sorry. I move that petition 25-17 for special permit be approved. Section 3.15.4, drive-through restaurant at 3240 Berlin Turnpike, Chick-fil-A, Chick-fil-A Incorporated, applicant Rubyback LLC, owner Susan A. Hayes, 100 Pearl Street, Hartford, Connecticut, contact.
Second, you already approved.
Yeah.
Is there a second?
Second.
Motion made, second. Any comments? You heard the testimony from the applicant. They've met all the requirements under 3.15.4 under special permits. All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Okay, can you read petition 2617?
I move petition 26-17, special permit, section 6.2.4, freestanding sign in a drive-through restaurant at 3240 Berlin Turnpike, Chick-fil-A Incorporated, applicant Rubyback LLC, owner Susan A. Hayes, 100 Pearl Street, Hartford, Connecticut, contact be approved with no conditions.
Second.
Motion made and second. Any comments? Like I said, we're happy that you didn't go with the 18-foot that you could have went with. We're happy with the smaller size. Hopefully, the location is adequate for your needs. It's good for the town because it gives us plenty of sight line. It doesn't interfere with sight lines coming in and out of the plaza, either for your piece or for people down from you. So all in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Okay, and we'll bring up, at the next meeting, we'll bring up under old business your site plan, and you know what you have to do.
We do.
Okay.
Thank you very much.
You're welcome. Next item on the agenda is petitions for public hearing schedule. There's nothing. Town planner report.
No report this month.
Communications, CROG, the normal CROG we've been getting. Any other communications, Mr. Planner?
No, not this meeting.
Public participation, no public present to participate. Remarks by commissioners? Public participation?
You missed your chance. Oh, you're back.
Commissioner remarks? Any commissioner remarks? I have no closing statements or concerns.
Make a motion to adjourn.
Motion to adjourn. Second, all in favor?
Aye.
Opposed?